Hi, this is Deepak, and we're going to talk about Vote for Your Life. And I'm going to be speaking to my beautiful granddaughter, taramanda. I am going to be speaking to my Are we live right now?
We're live, yeah.
We're live. So this is Deepak, and thanks for joining me. And I am going to have a conversation right now with my wonderful granddaughter, taramanda. And I want you all to join. And Taru, are you coming on so we can talk? There she is. There she is. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Nana.
So, what are we talking about? This was initiated by your uncle, Gautam Mamu, your mom's younger brother, and my son, who's very active right now on this whole campaign for voting. So, I believe you have some questions.
Yeah.
Let's ask. Go ahead.
My first question is, do you remember what it was like voting for the first time in the US? When did you vote for the first time, and what was that experience like?
I voted for the first time in Massachusetts in the early 70s when George McGovern was running for president, and he won only one state, Massachusetts. But it was a very good experience, and this was shortly after Watergate and all the whole fiasco of those times.
Yeah.
But I did work hard um, because I believed in what I believed in, which is that everybody should have a voice.
And why is democracy important? And do you think democracy works?
Well, if you look at historically democracy and who's spoken about it, it started in the West with Plato, when he wrote Republic. So Plato lived, some 300 to 400 BCE. So we're talking about 2,500 years ago. And Plato wrote about democracy and the Republic, and it was in Athens where democracy was born in the West. And according to Plato, he was not very enthusiastic about it. He said democracy is the rule of the mob. That's what he said. And he was very upset with Athenian democracy at that time. He thought it was all about power mongering, cronyism, influence peddling, corruption, bureaucracy, you name it, exactly how we see the world today. In
Yeah.
the name of democracy globally, the same things are happening. Power mongering, influence peddling, cronyism, corruption, bureaucracy. In the East, where we come from, where your ancestors come from, democracy was addressed by people like, what's his name? It was addressed in Arthashastra, which is one of the four Vedas. Okay, and even there, Arthashastra and Chanakya and many other commentators talk about the rule of law, democracy. Is it good? Is it a mob rule? Even Arthashastra addresses that. That's almost 5,000 years ago. But they also talk about statesmen as diplomats. They also talk about monarchy. They also talk about despots. So all the systems you see in the world have been spoken about through the ages, going back thousands of years. What about democracy? Democracy is the only way we get to know what the collective consciousness is feeling, what the collective consciousness is thinking, what the collective consciousness desires, what the collective consciousness aspires to. Okay, so actually democracy is a very good way to assess collective consciousness. And it means that democracy is a way to understand our values,
Yeah.
our values, both individual values and collective values. Now, as your grandfather, I've been criticized in the public domain for engaging in politics. They say, stay out of politics. Deepak Chopra, stay spiritual, which has confused me a lot because spirituality has only one definition. That means self-awareness and awareness of the other. If you're aware of your values, yourself, and you're aware of the values of the other, that's being spiritual. Because unless you're aware of the values of the other and yourself, there's no room for empathy or compassion or dialogue or peace or conflict resolution. However, what we see today in the name of democracy and what we've seen in the past is basically polarization of ideologies. That's not what democracy should be about, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
even as we go to vote, and I think it's very important for us to vote, because by voting, we declare to the world what our values are. We declare to the world what our values are. And we also understand from the world what the world's values are. And this is a good way, actually, for us to move into the future. And I think now, especially with the technology and this kind of conversation, as we expand this conversation globally, I think we're going to see even the democratization of democracy, which means it will be free in the future of special interest groups if we all consistently declare our values, do not engage in attacking the so-called other, because even the so-called other, no matter how radically polarized their views are from you, doesn't matter. And right now, my views would be called liberal by some people. But I don't think liberalism should be an ideology. It should be open-mindedness. It should also be listening to the other, which means listening to the conservatives, understanding where they're coming from, engaging them in civil discourse and civil dialogue. This is something that, Plato and all these great philosophers, East and West, have spoken about for ages, that unless we engage in civil dialogue, we're not going to have a civil society. So right now we're losing that. And therefore, just by voting, and not voting for personalities, not voting for who you like, whose body language you like, who wears orange hair, or who wears too much makeup, or who looks inflamed, without engaging in any of that, what we need to engage in is our values and also understanding the other person's values. And once we do that, we have a chance for emergence. Emergence is a new science. It says maximum diversity, open systems, shared opinions, feedback, emotional and spiritual bonding, complementing each other's strengths, and a vision for the greater good. If we can do that with authenticity, integrity, a higher calling, and responsibility, then we will ultimately see that democracy works. But right now, the most important thing is vote your conscience. That's all. What do you say? What is your opinion on all this? I know you're very active right now, helping Gautam and others in helping younger people, your demographic, to go out there and vote. So, I've spoken enough. What is your opinion on all these matters? Because this is the first time you're going to vote. You just turned 18. You're going to vote.
Yeah. I think that what I have come to realize is that voting is a privilege that a lot of people don't actually have. And I feel very lucky that I have been given this voice that I can use. We just, with Religion of Sports, released a short video in celebration of the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which is women's suffrage. And what I've realized is even when the 19th Amendment passed, that amendment only really granted the right to vote to white women and many privileged women. And it took women of color, specifically African American women, much longer to be able to go vote because there were laws in place that inhibited this ability. And there's so many people today that have obstacles. They can't get to the polls. There's voter suppression. People have jobs. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I don't have to vote because millions of other people are going to the polls. But that's not the truth. Everyone's voice matters. Everyone's voice counts. And I think that that's really important. I've been lucky enough to work with an incredible team of filmmakers, Giselle Peretz, Jennifer Pransky, Meg, Suryo, Ollie, who's the editor. I've been on this team of phenomenal women, and it's been really incredible to see artists use their voice for change, channel frustration and anger into creativity. So I feel like it's been an eye-opening experience, and I'm really excited to get to the polls.
Well, Taru, I'm learning a lot from you and your generation, and the fact that you're so passionate about these issues. Just as a reminder, when I was your age, I was equally passionate about these issues in the 70s. And, you know, I was seeing in my mind a revolution coming. Greenpeace, the anti-war movement, Gloria Steinem, the feminist movement, the environmental movement, conflict resolution, ecology. These were big issues for me when I was your age. And I thought the world was going to change. You know, in a few years, the world was going to change. And now this is 50 years later, and I find it's regressed. So I was what you might call an angry peace activist, which is a contradiction in itself. How can you be angry and a peace activist at the same time? And I realized that anger has a role, but when anger turns to hostility, then it is very damaging. And right now, the anger that a lot of people who've been disenfranchised, disempowered, the anger is justified. The moral outrage is justified. However, just look at the word outrage. Moral outrage is still rage. Okay? And so when we are morally outraged and we feel that our rage is justified, in the long term, while in the short term, it brings awareness, right? So the moral outrage brings awareness to the injustices which go back 500 years to the beginning of colonialism, empire, slavery, indentured workers. You don't know this, but one of my ancestors, therefore one of your ancestors, was knighted by the British. And, you know, we were very proud of that. Another of our ancestors was murdered by the British, and we were ashamed of that. Why? Because our minds and our self-esteem had been damaged by so-called empire, which was rape, pillage, murder, kidnapping, stealing of treasures, all in the name of king. And it was romanticized, and it is still romanticized. Look at all the movies that come from Hollywood that are all about war, romanticization of war, and everything that has to do with violence. Even our metaphors today are violent metaphors. War on drugs, war on poverty, war on racism, war on terrorism, war on pandemic, COVID-19. It's a metaphor that has basically destroyed creativity. So in answer to your question, how can we turn this anger to creativity? This is a very good question, because what is happening right now, the anger is bringing the history of the past, what in India we would say the karma of the past of the world, is being seen right now as the present situation, which is conflict, war, racism, bigotry, hatred, prejudice, violence, destruction of rights, and all that goes back a long time, 500 years. We're seeing the consequences of that. So we have to acknowledge that. But then we have to move on. We have to say, what's the next story? And the next story cannot be only activism. It has to be our collective participation to manifest the change we want to see together. That means we have to be the change we want to see the world. Peace can only be created by those who are peaceful. Okay, love can only be shared by those who have experienced love, on and on. So right now is a moment to address our values together and then see how we can collectively, including those that we see as the perpetrators of injustice in the past, we have to be all in this together, including that which we see as the adversary. So right now, the clarity in our civil discourse comes through voting. What do people really care about? Forget the personalities. What are the values? Are we addressing social justice? Are we addressing racial justice? Are we addressing economic justice? Are we addressing a sustainable environment? Are we addressing biological sustainability? Are we addressing health? Are we addressing joy and happiness and cooperation? Are we addressing peace in the bigger? If these things are important to us, then we have to vote. And we have to vote with our conscience, not because we are affiliated with a particular ideology. What do you say to that? I mean, where are you in all this? I know that you are very active recruiting young people, your generation, to go and vote and participate, which is all very, very important because, if your generation doesn't vote, then your generation is not going to have the opportunity in the future to shape our collective reality. So right now it's very important. But where are you in your ideological and your your activist mind? Where is the anger right now?
I think I've participated in a lot of protests recently, and I really like going out and sharing my thoughts and being part of this larger community. And I think I've been super inspired to see my generation get out and speak their mind. And that's been recently with the Black Lives Matter protests after we've seen countless Black lives lost. With March for Our Lives, which was earlier last year, we had all of these women's marches, amazing kind of movements of solidarity. And to see that young people have and hold these great morals and want to see change is really impactful for me, because I feel like a lot of the time we lose hope, especially in this period of isolation where you don't really see other people all the time because of COVID-19. To have seen masses and masses of people from all different races, ethnicities, backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, from all over the country kind of come out and speak their voice. That was so impactful. And I think I agree with you. Activism only goes so far. The next step in creating change is getting out there and voting, because that is how we see change in our leadership. And I also think it's not just about the presidential election. It's about smaller elections. It's about governors, mayors, district attorneys, we need people that will listen to us. And so even if you're not 100% satisfied with the candidates, it's so important to remember that we want to vote for the people that will be most, will hear us the loudest and be most open to changing. So I think that's where I am. And I'm really honestly proud of my generation. I think we've done an incredible job in standing up for morals and standing against racism and sexism and against the destruction of our climate. And the next step is to get out there and vote for those leaders that will further that mission. So yeah, what do you have to say to your generation? Because a lot of people in your generation don't want to vote this election. So what would you say?
What I'm saying to my generation is, what happened? We were idealists like my granddaughter is today. I was an idealist. What happened? We got sucked into the present manifestation of our collective greed and a collective fear. And that's happening again. Collective greed and collective fear is being used to polarize us. So I think we have to be very careful that we are not swayed by our personal attitude towards money or capitalism or socialism or whatever. These are ideologies. What does our conscience say right now? And so, I've been actually hesitant to get involved, because every time I get involved on social media about anything that has to do with politics, people are ready to kill me. I, in fact, get death threats and saying, you stay out of it. You're not supposed to be political. You're supposed to be spiritual, which I don't understand. But one thing has become clear to me is to be spiritual means to be aware of the self and the other. And if we are not aware of the fears of the other, what is propelling this extreme fear, extreme anger, extreme agitation, extreme sometimes racism and violence, what is fueling that? And we have to admit, it's the conditioned mind. It goes back historically to hundreds of years, and we have to understand that the creative solution only comes when we stop engaging in attacking the other, which is what politics is doing right now. Everybody is attacking each other. We have to engage the other to say, okay, what's the resolution? What's the vision? And unless we actually engage with our so-called adversaries, with respect, with emotional intelligence, with no belligerence, with conscious communication. What are we observing? What are we feeling? What do we need? What do we want together? Who doesn't? Does anyone not want good education? Does anyone not want prosperity, material prosperity? Does anyone not want peace? Does anyone not want a bright future for your generation and the generation after that? So what do I have to say about my generation? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my generation. We screwed it up. And now we are asking you to fix it. But even you should be aware of the history. We have so many people have had these ideals before you. So many people. And nothing happened. But today we have technology. We have this, we are communicating right now, and I'm saying hello from South Africa, hello from India, hello from Cannes, hello from Brazil. This is not a conversation about American politics, even though we are going to engage in American politics because we are here, and this is in fact still the melting pot of the world. I don't see any other country in the world which has ethnic and racial diversity as we have, that has as much diversity in talent and education as we have in this country, that has as much diversity in storytellers as we have in Hollywood, etc. So we have the right mix here of humanitarians, philosophers, entertainers, songwriters, poets, hip-hop artists, technologists, and science to actually fix the world, to totally fix it. But we have to do it not through polarized attack. We have to do it through expressing ourselves with honesty, authenticity, integrity, and a higher calling. And this is my plea to your generation. Don't stop what you're doing. But in the end, go beyond all violent metaphors and find peace and creativity and a higher vision, and then evolution does the rest. Evolution does the rest. Evolution is self-organizing, it's invincible, it's unstoppable, it self-corrects. Right now we are seeing a self-correction with the pandemic. We're even seeing a self-correction in the ecosystem. So right now I'm so proud of what you are doing and what your team is doing. And I'm also learning so much about, how you and your generation thinks. But if we don't vote our values right now, then we are going to suffer the consequences. We are going to get exactly what we will deserve.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, please, I am enjoining everyone listening to this, particularly in America, but throughout the world, that we are not afraid to declare our values. We are not afraid of being criticized or even being attacked, because we are speaking truth and we are holding power to truth.
Yeah.
And as long as that's our goal, then we will succeed. I want you to help me send a message right now from
Mm-hmm.
your generation to mine and everybody in between.
Um, well, I just think a lot of people have lost hope, and and just think that nothing that they will do now will change the current state of this country and the world. We are seeing really hard times right now. I think unprecedented times for a lot of people because of COVID-19. And what I want to say is don't lose hope. And I think that that applies to every age group, not just your generation, but to mine and to everyone in the middle. Because I think that we can come back from this. I think that this election, using our voices and changing the trajectory of this nation and the world, it's possible. And I think we've seen it before. People have faced hard times before. Your generation has seen wars and genocide, and we can come back from it. You've said yourself, you believe climate change is reversible, don't you?
I think climate change is the most important issue of our time. It's connected to everything: social injustice, racism, bigotry, war, even the pandemic. All these things, mutations that occur, are due to a stressed ecosystem of genetic information. So yes, climate change, social justice, economic justice, conflict resolution, health, these are the big issues of our time. And if we don't address them, we're headed for extinction. The last extinction was 65 million years ago, when a meteorite fell on this planet and dinosaurs were wiped out in less than 1 hour. A species that dominated this planet was wiped out in 1 hour. Today we have 20 times the capacity to do that. And we have modern technologies, but we're still living with Stone Age behavior. Stone Age, not even Bronze Age. And the two don't go together. Stone Age, tribal, fear-based, localized, parochial identity doesn't work anymore. Okay, that combination spells extinction. So one path leads to extinction, the other path leads to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. And the choice is ours. And that choice is going to be influenced by your generation. My generation will be gone soon. And
But they're not gone yet. And that's what's important, is that what I will say to your generation is vote for the lives of your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, because we have our whole lives to look forward to. And this election could very much change the kind of outcome of the world, climate change, so much more. So that's what I'll say is we can't think like that it's all up to the youth. It's up to everyone who has this ability.
Well, then here is my promise to you. I will do my best to work with my generation to help you and your generation actualize the vision you have. And that's my mantra all the time: shared vision, complementing each other's strengths, open systems, civil dialogue, civil discourse, creative solutions. I wouldn't even use the word hope. Hope is a sign of despair. So we have to be independent of hope and despair. And that comes when we are creative, and creativity comes when we are in touch with our inner self. So I go back to my own philosophy that the outer is a manifestation of the inner. And now you are leading, your generation is leading the vision that comes from your innermost source of being, which is what we call soul, spirit, awareness, or whatever. But if this is not tied with action, then we will fail. So love in action, love without action is irrelevant, and action without love is meaningless. But when we combine the two, stop attacking the other, engage the other in civil dialogue, and actually ask the other, what are you observing? What are you feeling? What do you need? We can help you fulfill those needs. You know, only when we understand everybody's needs, we can make a difference. Otherwise, we'll be back to Stone Age, modern capacities and extinction. So give your last inspirational speech right now to all of us, young and old.
Well,
What should we do right now to vote our conscience? Or what should we do?
What should you do is go research. Go on your phone, on your laptop, go read the newspaper, go research who your candidates are, who's running not only for president, but as I said, all of these smaller elections that really make impact. Think about what your morals are and how you can reflect those morals and whose boxes you're checking on the ballot. And the other thing I'll just say is everyone know that you're not alone. We are all connected. As we can see on this Instagram Live, there are people from all over the world. It's amazing. In a time of isolation, in a time of fear for a lot of people, know that you are not alone. We love you, and I'm praying for everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe, and yeah, that's what I'll say.
Keep loving, and keep loving. And take action. And the action right now is vote. Vote for, I know we hashtag this, vote for your life. Actually, vote for life, not for your life. Vote for life. Okay, thanks, Taru.
Love you. Miss you, Nana.
I love you very much, and I'm so inspired by you.
I'm inspired by you. Thank you.
I love you. Love in action.
Love you.